By mid-1942, the vast expanse of the Southwest Pacific had become a crucible of conflict. Allied forces, under the supreme command of General Douglas MacArthur, found themselves locked in a desperate struggle against a relentless Japanese expansion. It was into this challenging theater that General George C. Kenney arrived, assuming command of the Allied Air Force's Southwest Pacific area. His immediate assessment was stark. The air war was not going well. Japanese air power, spearheaded by fearsome A-6M0 fighters and skilled pilots, maintained a pervasive dominance across critical battlefronts. Allied air operations, by contrast, were often piecemeal, hampered by outdated tactics and a serious lack of effective weaponry. Existing high-altitude bombing strategies, for instance, typically yielded meager results against agile Japanese naval vessels and well-entrenched ground installations. The B-17 flying fortresses, while robust, struggled to deliver decisive blows from altitude. Kenney, a general known for his pragmatic approach and willingness to challenge doctrine, quickly grasped the gravity of the situation. His air units were not inflicting sufficient damage to stem the enemy tide. He recognized that conventional military thought and current equipment limitations simply could not turn the tide. He needed something different, something radical. The general's dilemma was profound: how to transform a struggling air arm into a potent ship-killing force, capable of breaking the enemy's logistical lifelines and seizing air superiority. He urgently required unconventional solutions, a departure from established norms, to achieve decisive tactical and strategic impact. This was a war that would not be won by fighting according to the rulebook. General George C. Kenney, a commander burdened by the realities of a losing war, desperately sought a tactical advantage. He needed men willing to challenge orthodoxy, to deliver the kind of decisive blows that conventional doctrine simply could not. One such individual was Captain Paul Gunn. Gunn, a logistics officer and engineer by trade, possessed a brilliant if unconventional mind. His personal war began abruptly in December 1941. Stationed in the Philippines, he witnessed firsthand the cataclysmic Japanese assault. The destruction of Clark Field, the annihilation of the Far East Air Force, occurred with chilling speed, forever altering his perspective on warfare. Amidst the ensuing chaos and the swift Japanese occupation, a personal tragedy struck. Gunn's family, his wife and young children, were caught in Manila. They became civilian internees, held within the harsh confines of Santo Tomas internment camp. This traumatic event ignited a fierce personal vendetta within Gunn, a burning desire for retribution that would define his service. His engineering acumen, now channeled by this consuming need for vengeance, drove him to seek unconventional solutions outside the rigid framework of military regulations. Gunn would embark upon a path of illegal innovation, meticulously modifying existing airframes, transforming them into instruments of destruction, designed for a singular purpose: to exact a terrible cost from the enemy. Following his new assignment, and fueled by a burning conviction, Captain Paul Gunn embarked on a radical, unsanctioned project. His objective was to transform the conventional B-25 Mitchell medium bomber into an unparalleled ship-killing platform. The first, most bold step involved completely excising the aircraft's transparent bombardier's nose section. In its place, Gunn engineered a custom-fabricated solid metal nose cone. This wasn't merely a structural alteration, but a fundamental redesign of the aircraft's offensive capability. Within this reinforced forward section, he integrated an unprecedented battery of 8 forward-firing .50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns. These fearsome weapons, each capable of delivering hundreds of rounds per minute, replaced the delicate bombing optics with a devastating concentrated torrent of lead. Following his new assignment, and fueled by a burning conviction, Captain Paul Gunn embarked on a radical, unsanctioned project. His objective was to transform the conventional B-25 Mitchell medium bomber into an unparalleled ship-killing platform. The first, most bold step involved completely excising the aircraft's transparent bombardier's nose section. In its place, Gunn engineered a custom-fabricated solid metal nose cone. This wasn't merely a structural alteration, but a fundamental redesign of the aircraft's offensive capability. Within this reinforced forward section, he integrated an unprecedented battery of 8 forward-firing .50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns. These fearsome weapons, each capable of delivering hundreds of rounds per minute, replaced the delicate bombing optics with a devastating, concentrated torrent of lead. Furthermore, 4 additional 50 caliber machine guns were mounted in fuselage blister packs on the sides of the aircraft, bringing the total forward-firing armament to an astonishing 12 heavy machine guns. This radical modification transformed the B-25 from a high-altitude precision bomber into a low-level direct assault gunship. Concurrently, Gunn and his small, dedicated team theorized and refined a revolutionary tactical doctrine known as skip bombing. This technique involved flying at dangerously low altitudes, often no more than 100 feet above the waves, and releasing bombs with specific trajectories designed to literally skip across the water's surface, impacting a ship's vulnerable waterline. It demanded extraordinary pilot skill and a profound departure from established aerial combat procedures. This entire undertaking, from the extensive airframe modifications to the development of a completely new attack methodology, was conducted largely off the books. It violated numerous established regulations and aircraft design protocols. But for Gunn and for General Kenney, this defiance was a calculated risk, essential for forging the ultimate weapon against the relentless Japanese maritime threat. Pilots assigned to the newly formed 91st Bombardment Squadron faced a startling sight. Their B-25 Mitchells were not standard issue. The bombardier station, that familiar glass nose, had vanished. In its place, a solid metal cone housed an intimidating array of 12 forward-firing 50 caliber machine guns. This radical alteration shifted the aircraft's center of gravity, rendering it distinctly nose-heavy, a characteristic that immediately bred skepticism among veteran aircrews. The challenge extended far beyond structural changes. These pilots, accustomed to high-altitude precision runs, now faced a new doctrine of ultra-low-level assault. Training began in earnest across remote stretches of the Pacific theater. It was a dangerous crucible, demanding mastery of a heavy, recalcitrant aircraft at wave-top heights. The core tactic, skip bombing, required an approach at mere feet above the water, releasing a bomb precisely timed to ricochet into a ship's waterline. Immediately thereafter, a violent pull-up to avoid the target's mast and the inevitable hail of enemy anti-aircraft fire. Major Ed Lana, commanding the 91st, understood the mental hurdle. He pushed his crews relentlessly through simulated attacks against derelict hulks and marker buoys. Many pilots initially struggled with the sheer audacity of the maneuver. One veteran, Captain Frank Miller, recalled, "It felt like flying into a brick wall, but a brick wall that shot back." The learning curve was steep, often marked by near misses and the occasional training accident. Yet gradually, a new breed of pilot emerged. They learned to anticipate the B-25's altered flight characteristics, to judge distance with pinpoint accuracy, and to suppress the instinct to climb when every fiber screamed for evasion. They became close-quarter specialists, transforming fear into aggressive competence. By December of 1942, General Kenney's gamble began to materialize in the form of a radical new weapon. Major Ed Lana, a seasoned aviator with a reputation for aggressive leadership, commanded the 91st Bombardment Squadron. His unit was to be the first to receive Paul Gunn's unorthodox B-25 modifications. These twin-engined bombers now bristled with 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns where a bombardier station once stood. This daring refit transformed them from medium-altitude precision platforms into terrifyingly effective low-level attack aircraft. For Lana's pilots, the transition was stark. They were no longer operating as conventional bombers, but as highly specialized strafing platforms designed to deliver an overwhelming volume of fire directly into enemy targets at mast height. The learning curve was steep, demanding a completely new approach to combat flying and a significant departure from established doctrine. They had to master skip bombing, a dangerous low-altitude technique that saw bombs skip across the water's surface directly into the hulls of ships. These early 1943 patrols, often along the northern coast of New Guinea, were not mere exercises. They were proving grounds where the untested theories of skip bombing met the harsh realities of combat. On January 25th, for instance, a flight of 6 B-25s intercepted a small Japanese convoy near Leh. 2 cargo ships and an escorting patrol boat met a torrent of concentrated fire at wave-top level. Pilots described the experience as akin to flying a massive airborne shotgun. The sheer volume of concentrated firepower, over 4,000 rounds per minute from 8 synchronized heavy machine guns, ripped apart wooden vessels, shredded anti-aircraft positions, and instilled a new kind of terror in their adversaries. The results were swift and conclusive. Within moments, hulls erupted, superstructure disintegrated, and the vessels sank. One pilot, Captain William Miller, remarked, "It wasn't just hitting them, it was dismantling them, piece by piece, in a matter of seconds." Japanese reports reaching Rabaul spoke of unidentifiable low-flying aircraft exhibiting extreme firepower and unconventional attack patterns. Their intelligence networks struggled to comprehend this sudden, brutal shift from conventional high-altitude bombing. The sheer velocity of the strafing runs and the accuracy of the skip bombs defied established aerial doctrine. For the Allied command, particularly General George C. Kenney, these preliminary actions were validating. They affirmed the audacity of Gunn's modifications and the courage of the aircrews who embraced this novel, hazardous method. The pilots of the 91st, once perhaps skeptical of flying such a heavily armed low-altitude behemoth, now felt an unshakable confidence. Each successful engagement against enemy shipping or coastal installations solidified their belief in the B-25's transformed capabilities. These early victories, though minor in scale, were crucial. They forged tactical confidence, honed the nascent skip bombing techniques, and proved the concept. These repurposed B-25s, now dubbed ship killers, were ready for a far greater challenge. Lana's 91st had become the vanguard of a new era of aerial warfare in the Pacific. The tactical landscape of the Southwest Pacific was transforming, a quiet whisper growing into a roar of undeniable power. By February 1943, the Allied intelligence apparatus, specifically signals intelligence, had achieved a profound penetration of Japanese communications. Decoded intercepts originating from the Ultra Network revealed an imminent large-scale Japanese movement, a crucial convoy operation, codenamed Operation 81. This was not merely a resupply mission. This was a concentrated effort to reinforce the beleaguered Japanese garrisons at Leh and Salamaya on the Huyan Gulf in New Guinea. The convoy comprised 8 troop transports carrying some 6,900 Imperial Army troops, along with critical ordnance, fuel, and provisions. These vessels were heavily escorted by 8 destroyers, a formidable combat screen. The strategic implications were immediate and dire. Should this convoy successfully deliver its human and material cargo, it would fundamentally alter the tactical landscape in New Guinea. It would bolster the Japanese defensive perimeter, effectively negating months of arduous Allied advances and potentially prolonging the bitter island-hopping struggle by many months. For General Kinney and the pilots of the 5th Air Force, this intelligence presented an unmissable target. The stakes were immense. The convoy had to be interdicted and annihilated before it could deliver its devastating payload. The fate of the New Guinea campaign hinged on this single naval movement. On March 1, 1943, under the cover of early morning darkness, the Japanese convoy, an imposing force of 8 troop transports carrying some 6,900 Imperial Army reinforcements, and an escort of 8 destroyers, steamed out of Rabaul. Their destination, Lae, New Guinea, represented a critical reinforcement effort intended to shore up Japanese defenses against the impending Allied advance. Allied intelligence quickly confirmed this large-scale movement. The immediate response fell to the heavy bomber squadrons, primarily the B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, operating from altitudes often exceeding 20,000 feet. Their mission to interdict this vital supply line before it could reach its objective. However, the inherent challenges of high-altitude precision bombing against fast-moving maritime targets soon became acutely apparent. Despite repeated sorties throughout March 1st and into March 2nd, the damage inflicted remained negligible. Tropical weather patterns provided intermittent cloud cover, further obscuring targets for the bombardiers and allowing the Japanese ships to largely evade direct hits. The strategic limitations of conventional air power against such a determined enemy were starkly exposed. Dozens of bombs, hundreds of pounds of ordnance cascaded down, yet the convoy pressed onward virtually unscathed. This operational failure underscored the critical inadequacy of existing air interdiction strategies and amplified the urgency for a radically different approach, one that could truly halt this perilous advance. The stage was set for the unconventional. By March 3, 1943, the Japanese convoy, though battered, still pressed onward. Previous high-altitude bombing attempts had proven largely ineffective, a stark reminder of the challenge. The Allied commanders knew a different approach, a decisive blow, was desperately needed. Then, emerging from the pre-dawn gloom, just above the wave tops, came the first waves of B-25s. The 91st Bombardment Squadron, led by Major Ed Lana, spearheaded this assault. Their mission unprecedented, a low-altitude hammer blow. Flying below 200 feet, sometimes as low as 50, they were barely visible against the churning sea until they were upon the enemy. Pilots banked hard, descending to mere mast height. The roar of their twin radio engines was deafening as they hurtled towards the freighters and their escorting destroyers. Their 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns unleashed a torrent of lead, ripping through superstructures, clearing decks of defending personnel. The sheer volume of fire was overwhelming. Then the bombs dropped, precisely timed, at around 200 feet. Instead of plunging, they skipped across the water's surface, striking hulls at the waterline or ricocheting into engine rooms. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Freighters erupted in fire, their holds filled with fuel and ammunition, detonating violently as the B-25s roared overhead, already lining up for another pass or peeling away through the chaos. Yet this was no one-sided affair. Japanese anti-aircraft crews, though reeling, unleashed a furious barrage. Tracers crisscrossed the sky, a lethal curtain of steel, as the pilots pressed their attack. Several B-25s took direct hits, their crews enduring unimaginable stress, flying through a storm of flak, often returning with gaping holes in their airframes. Japanese destroyers, maneuvering frantically, attempted to screen their transports, but their efforts were largely futile against such a determined and devastating assault. The strategic limitations of conventional air power against such a determined enemy were starkly exposed. Dozens of bombs, hundreds of pounds of ordnance cascaded down, yet the convoy pressed onward, virtually unscathed. This operational failure underscored the critical inadequacy of existing air interdiction strategies and amplified the urgency for a radically different approach, one that could truly halt this perilous advance. The stage was set for the unconventional. By March 3, 1943, the Japanese convoy, though battered, still pressed onward. Previous high-altitude bombing attempts had proven largely ineffective, a stark reminder of the challenge. The Allied commanders knew a different approach, a decisive blow, was desperately needed. Then, emerging from the pre-dawn gloom, just above the wave tops, came the first waves of B-25s. The 91st Bombardment Squadron, led by Major Ed Lana, spearheaded this assault. Their mission, unprecedented, a low-altitude hammer blow. Flying below 200 feet, sometimes as low as 50, they were barely visible against the churning sea until they were upon the enemy. Pilots banked hard, descending to mere mast height. The roar of their twin radial engines was deafening as they hurtled towards the freighters and their escorting destroyers. Their 8 forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns unleashed a torrent of lead, ripping through superstructures, clearing decks of defending personnel. The sheer volume of fire was overwhelming. Then the bombs dropped, precisely timed, at around 200 feet. Instead of plunging, they skipped across the water's surface, striking hulls at the waterline or ricocheting into engine rooms. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. Freighters erupted in fire, their holds filled with fuel and ammunition, detonating violently as the B-25s roared overhead, already lining up for another pass or peeling away through the chaos. Yet this was no one-sided affair. Japanese anti-aircraft crews, though reeling, unleashed a furious barrage. Tracers crisscrossed the sky, a lethal curtain of steel, as the pilots pressed their attack. Several B-25s took direct hits, their crews enduring unimaginable stress, flying through a storm of flak, often returning with gaping holes in their airframes. Japanese destroyers, maneuvering frantically, attempted to screen their transports, but their efforts were largely futile against such a determined and devastating assault. By the afternoon of March 3rd, the Bismarck Sea was a graveyard. A vital Japanese convoy, its transports carrying over 6,000 troops and critical supplies, had been all but annihilated. The pilots of the modified B-25s, using guns' illegal innovations, had delivered a tactical victory of unprecedented scale. For the pilots of the 91st Bombardment Squadron, March 3rd was a maelstrom of smoke, tracers, and raw adrenaline. Their B-25s, flying at mast height, barely 50 feet above the churning waves, presented an almost surreal tableau. As they streaked across the Bismarck Sea, the Japanese convoy, a tightly packed formation of transports and destroyers, erupted in a cacophony of anti-aircraft fire. Major Ed Lana's lead aircraft, and those following in close trail, unleashed a torrent of .50 caliber rounds. 8 machine guns, nose-mounted, spewed incandescent streams of fire, ripping through the ship's superstructures, tearing apart bridges, and shredding personnel on exposed decks. Pilots later recounted the chilling sight of troops scrambling in terror, cut down by the sheer volume of lead. The B-25s, essentially flying gun platforms, transformed the air above the convoy into a deadly corridor. Following the initial strafing runs, the bombers executed their daring skip-bombing maneuvers. At mere seconds from impact, they released their ordnance, 500-pound bombs, specifically fused to detonate after a brief water skip. The effect was visceral. Bombs slammed into the ship's hulls at the waterline, exploding internally or just beneath the surface, creating massive geysers and tearing gaping holes. One pilot, Captain William E. Kelly, described watching a transport split in two, its stern rising vertically before plunging into the depths. Yet, this was no one-sided affair. The Japanese gunners, despite the shock and disarray, fought back with fierce desperation. Streams of tracer fire from 25mm and 40mm anti-aircraft guns converged on the low-flying B-25s. Flak bursts peppered fuselages, wings, and tail sections. Pilots maneuvered violently, jinking and swerving to evade the continuous barrage. The cockpit environment was a nerve-wracking ordeal, filled with the shudder of the aircraft, the roar of the engines, and the constant threat of being struck by enemy fire. Several B-25s sustained significant damage, a testament to the peril of the close-quarters engagement. But the tactical objective was achieved with relentless efficiency. Ship after ship succumbed to the relentless assault. The water around the sinking vessels was choked with debris, with fuel oil, and with struggling figures. By mid-morning on March 3rd, the surface of the Bismarck Sea bore stark witness to a monumental defeat. The innovative application of guns modified B-25s had secured a victory of truly impactful proportions, altering the strategic calculus of the Pacific War. The Battle of the Bismarck Sea concluded with a brutality rarely witnessed, even in the Pacific. By nightfall on March 3, 1943, the Japanese convoy, once a powerful armada of 8 transports and 8 escorting destroyers, lay almost entirely destroyed. The relentless onslaught of the modified B-25s, coupled with other Allied aircraft, had been overwhelmingly effective. 8 Japanese troop transports had been sunk, along with 4 destroyers. The human cost was catastrophic for Japan, with estimates ranging from 3,000 to as many as 7,000 soldiers and sailors lost, drowned in the shark-infested waters northeast of New Guinea. Crucially, not a single Japanese soldier from that massive reinforcement effort reached its intended destination. In stark contrast, Allied losses were minimal: a single bomber, 3 fighters, and 13 airmen. This was not merely a victory. It was an annihilation. The strategic implications were immediate and profound. Japan's ability to reinforce its critical garrisons in New Guinea, particularly at Lae, was crippled. General Kinney's audacious strategy and his unwavering faith in unconventional air power had been spectacularly vindicated. The battle shifted the balance of power in the Southwest Pacific Command irrevocably, proving the crushing effectiveness of low-level attack and skip bombing against even heavily defended convoys. It was a turning point, solidifying Allied air supremacy and dictating the future course of the New Guinea campaign. The illegal modifications pioneered by Captain Paul Gunn were no longer controversial. They were the undisputed stars of this victory. The forward-firing B-25s, transforming the medium bomber into a precision attack gunship, had proven to be the ultimate ship killers. Their ability to saturate targets with .50 caliber rounds, suppress anti-aircraft fire, and then deliver skip bombs with lethal accuracy rewrote the manual for anti-shipping operations. What began as a maverick experiment driven by a singular purpose had become a validated blueprint for decisive victory. Yet, it is crucial to acknowledge that the Japanese suffered from critical command failures and a profound lack of air cover. Admiral Yamamoto's strategic miscalculations regarding Allied air capabilities, particularly the B-25's new role, left the convoy tragically exposed. The element of surprise, combined with superior intelligence and the sheer tactical brilliance of the Allied air crews, all contributed to this one-sided outcome. The Bismarck Sea was a testament not solely to technological innovation, but to a complex interplay of intelligence, strategy, and unparalleled courage in the cockpit. The overwhelming success at the Bismarck Sea could not be overlooked. General George Kinney, a staunch advocate for aggressive air power, saw his gamble justified, and Gunn's illegal modifications, once a breach of regulation, transformed overnight into an indispensable strategic asset. The raw combat data, the sheer scale of the enemy losses, spoke a language bureaucracy could not ignore. Official recognition followed swiftly. Kinney ensured the field modifications, initially born of desperation and defiance, were not only sanctioned but standardized. The makeshift gun emplacements and skip bombing tactics, forged in the crucible of jungle airfields, became the blueprint for a new era of close air support and anti-shipping operations. This shift marked a crucial turning point, validating unconventional ingenuity over rigid doctrine. North American Aviation, the manufacturer of the B-25 Mitchell, began to integrate these battle-proven designs directly into their production lines. The bombardier's nose, once housing a single northern bomb sight, was replaced with a fixed, solid nose housing multiple forward-firing .50 caliber machine guns, beginning with the B-25G model. Later variants, like the B-25H, escalated this firepower further, famously incorporating a potent 75mm M4 cannon, effectively turning a medium bomber into a flying artillery piece. The B-25J model retained the heavy machine gun armament, often with up to 14 .50 guns, 6 in the nose and 8 in fuselage-mounted gun packs. However, this specialization came with its own set of tactical considerations. The added weight of the armor and weaponry, particularly the 75mm cannon, reduced the aircraft's speed and maneuverability. Low-level attack runs, while incredibly effective, exposed the B-25s to intense ground fire, demanding exceptional pilot skill and courage. The logistics of maintaining and supplying these heavily modified aircraft, especially the large-caliber ammunition for the cannon, presented new challenges for ground crews in forward operating bases. Yet, the impact was undeniable. The B-25, in its new guise as a dedicated attack platform, became a symbol of Allied air superiority in the Southwest Pacific. It systematically cleared Japanese shipping from vital sea lanes, harassed airfields, and provided crucial close air support for advancing ground troops. This evolution, sparked by one man's audacity and validated by the bravery of his pilots, secured the B-25's enduring legacy, influencing the development of future specialized attack aircraft for decades to come. The annihilation of the Japanese convoy at the Bismarck Sea was not merely a tactical victory, it was a profound validation of a radical concept. The success of guns modifications and the audacious tactics of the pilots immediately triggered a formal expansion of the program. North American Aviation, recognizing the genius, began incorporating guns designs directly into production, leading to the B-25G, H, and later J models, purpose-built as fearsome strafers and light bombers. These were no longer illegal experimental aircraft, they were the vanguard of a new air doctrine. From mid-1943 through 1944, these heavily armed B-25s, often operating from forward bases in New Guinea and the Solomon Islands, became the bane of Japanese logistics and air power. They systematically swept through the Southwest Pacific area, devastating enemy airfields, destroying hundreds of parked aircraft, and relentlessly interdicting vital shipping lanes. Pilots, now masters of low-level attack, extended their reach across vast oceanic distances, often utilizing auxiliary fuel tanks to strike targets as far north as the Philippines. The sheer volume of destruction inflicted, ship by ship, plane by plane, significantly crippled Japanese operational capacity and accelerated their strategic retreat. Yet, this dominance came at a cost. Flying at mast height, often directly into heavy anti-aircraft fire, placed immense strain on both aircraft and crews. These ship killers were formidable, but not invulnerable. Concentrated naval flak, particularly from destroyer escorts, could tear through a B-25's airframe in seconds, and the constant threat of Japanese fighter interception, though diminished by 1944, always loomed. The attritional rate for these low-level attack squadrons remained stubbornly high, a grim testament to the extraordinary courage required for such perilous missions. As the war progressed and Allied forces pushed closer to the Japanese home islands, Colonel Paul Gunn continued to oversee modifications, ensuring his designs remained at the cutting edge. His personal journey, however, remained inextricably linked to the conflict. In late 1944, during the relentless campaigns to liberate the Philippines, Gunn himself was wounded in action, a tangible reminder of the brutal realities he had fought so hard to overcome. Then, in February 1945, a deeply personal victory finally arrived. His family, in turn since the earliest days of the war, was at last liberated from Manila. The legacy of the B-25 gunships and the pilots who flew them endures far beyond the cessation of hostilities. Their innovative design and the pioneering tactics developed in the Pacific fundamentally influenced the evolution of close air support and attack aircraft, laying crucial groundwork for future gunship development, from the AC-47 Spooky to the AC-13 Spectre. Today, the Battle of the Bismarck Sea and the maverick genius that made it possible remains a seminal case study in military academies worldwide, a powerful testament to the decisive impact of unconventional thinking and the unwavering resolve of those who dared to fly the illegal idea into history. Colonel Gunn, his mission of vengeance, now tempered by strategic success, continued his relentless campaign across the Pacific theater. He commanded combat units, overseeing the further integration of his modified B-25s into the 5th Air Force's operational schema. These aircraft, now officially recognized and mass-produced by North American aviation, extended their reach with auxiliary fuel tanks, becoming critical assets in island-hopping offensives. But even a tactical genius, operating with such autonomy, was not immune to the inherent dangers of war. In late 1944, while actively engaged in the liberation of the Philippines, then Colonel Gunn sustained a significant combat wound. It was a stark reminder that personal vengeance, though a powerful motivator, did not grant immunity from the battlefield's ultimate price. Months later, in February 1945, the Allied liberation of Manila brought the long-awaited release of his family from Japanese internment. This personal victory, secured through years of conflict, finally brought a measure of peace to his personal war. His innovations had not only altered the course of naval engagements, but had also, in a deeply personal sense, played a role in the freedom of his loved ones. After the war, Paul Gunn, now a colonel, retired from military service. He returned to the Philippines, not to rest, but to rebuild. He was instrumental in re-establishing Philippine Airlines, serving as its first post-war president, applying the same unconventional vision to civil aviation. His drive, however, remained unyielding. Tragically, in 1957, his life ended in a civilian plane crash, a bitter irony for a man who had mastered the complexities of aerial combat. Yet, his legacy endures. Paul Gunn's pioneering work with the forward-firing B-25s permanently redefined close air support and maritime interdiction. His unorthodox approach to airframe modification and tactical development became a cornerstone in modern Air Force doctrine, studied rigorously in military academies worldwide. The tactical shift he engineered from high-altitude precision to low-level direct-fire engagement irrevocably altered the trajectory of air warfare, a powerful testament to vision and an unyielding will that dared to fly the illegal idea into history.